Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream. Have you ever dreamt of hiking the AT? Bruce Matson did, so we're going to follow him every step of the way. Welcome back to episode number 5 of Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream, sponsored by our friends at Trailtopia. Today's show is going to be a little bit different from our normal stuff. For a start, we haven't got Bruce anywhere near the microphone. Mind you, his presence is going to be felt because this show is a conversation between me and his law partner, Gary LeClair. Gary is going to be telling us what makes Bruce tick and whether or not he thinks that Bruce has got a good shot at getting to Katahdin. He's got a few stories, and full disclosure, it was Bruce who gave me Gary's name, so I guessed straight away that he was unlikely to darken Bruce's name or even dish any dirt on him, much as I may have asked for it. That being said, Bruce and Gary have known each other and worked together for about 20 years, so Gary is pretty much up to speed with his friend. But before we get to that, I wanted you to listen to this. How about those days when you've struggled through the morning, probably got 10 miles under your belt, and breakfast is a distant memory. It's lunchtime, and yep, you could always have your fourth Snickers of the day for yet another sugar rush. But sitting there in an empty shelter protected from the bitter wind, I'm sure you'd really rather have Trailtopia's beef-flavoured ramen noodles with green beans, corn and mushrooms. Tea-flippin'-licious. And if you need to go without the gluten, all of Trailtopia's ramen noodle lunches and light dinners are available gluten-free. Try Trailtopia Adventure Food, the best of home cooking away from home. And we're back. As I say, the person I spoke with for this episode is Bruce's law partner, Gary LeClair. I'm not sure what I was really hoping for. I certainly wasn't looking to embarrass or demean Bruce in any way, but it was immediately apparent that Gary has such a strong feeling of respect and regard for not only Bruce's character, but also for his resolve in taking on the AT. I'll be jumping in and out of the interview with my own thoughts, but I'll try not to confuse you while we go through it. So, here's Gary. I started off by asking him how long the two of them had known one another.
So Bruce and I have been law partners for more than 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
And we were close as law partners, still are. We were both leaders of the firm in various roles and worked together on cases. Saw our children grow up together. He's been at my daughter's weddings, and so we go way back and have been in close touch. I'm
sure you're going to miss him when he goes off on this crazy trip, aren't you?
We are, but crazy trips are to be expected when you're talking about Bruce. He's a bit of a Renaissance man, and with lots of active interests and written books on everything from golf courses to walking the Camino de Santiago through France and Spain. So we're going off to take a special course at the C.S. Lewis Institute. Bruce is a true Renaissance man, and so this does not surprise us.
Oh, really? You're not surprised? I mean, when did you first learn of his ambitions to go off and hike the AT? Or have you known it for years?
No, I had not known it for years. I'd known that Bruce has run various marathons around the U.S. and around the world, and that he has this sort of curiosity.
Yes, he does, doesn't he? Interesting. That hadn't occurred to me until you said the word. You're absolutely exactly how I find him now, and I hadn't even thought about that word. Yes, he's a very curious guy, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's the kind of guy who will say, you know what, I'm going to go to Scotland, and I'm going to go by myself, and I'm going to contact all these clubs, and I'm going to go play with the local and have them talk to me about the club. And then I'm going to write a report and write articles about my favorite hole at each club or just about my experiences.
Very
and or I'm going to go on my own, and I'm going to walk the Camino de Santiago, which is a 33-day pilgrimage through the Pyrenees.
Yes.
And write a blog about it. So the more you dig into Bruce, the more you find that he has a thirst for life that keeps him learning, and there's a lot of different layers to Bruce.
I thought that was an interesting comment. There's a lot of different layers to Bruce. I guess it's my job, and yours, the listeners who are asking him questions, to peel back those layers. It seems to me that he's a really accomplished guy and doesn't like to toot his own horn too much. I hope that translates to American, because it's a British expression, I think. Funnily enough, I thought Jessa last year was much like that. You know, not telling us too much about what she'd done. It was only when her mother, the lovely Joan, came on the show and filled us in on some of the amazing things that her daughter had been up to that we started to understand more about Jessa. I'm hoping the same will happen here. I next asked Gary how long he'd known about his partner's plans and what he thought about them.
I would say I've been hearing about it for probably 2 years.
All right.
And it was interesting. About 18 months ago, Bruce had a sort of an issue with one of his feet, and he was limping around. Uh-huh. And I assumed that was the end of his marathon and his hiking days. And he was pretty clear that, oh, no, it wasn't. And he was going to get better, and he was going to do it. And then he engaged the law firm in a very serious discussion about this is something that was important to him. This is something that he was going to do. And I think it's absolutely great. It's actually kind of inspiring for a lot of lawyers, old and young, to think that, law is known as a jealous mistress. You have to work very hard. The clients are demanding. There's a lot of competition.
Sure.
But to see a senior lawyer like Bruce be able to balance out life so that he can go on this sort of a trek, it has an incredibly inspiring effect on his colleagues.
I'm sure it has. And I was going to actually ask you that. What do your other colleagues think of what Bruce is doing, and how do they see him?
First off, Bruce is a brilliant lawyer. Okay, he has handled some of the most complicated bankruptcies in the U.S. He won't tell you that, but there was a major bankruptcy recently where the results Bruce got, a very high-profile bankruptcy, are just among the bankruptcy bar across the United States. Bruce is viewed as an innovator and with incredible accomplishments. Okay, so and his phone will ring on big cases, so there's that angle about him. So no one doubts Bruce's acumen and work ethic and ability as a lawyer. Okay, he's earned the right at this age to go off on the trek. Now, if you look at among the partners and the colleagues, there's all different kinds of reactions. One reaction might be that you're taking a big producer and he's not going to be producing, dollars, revenues coming in the door. Yes. And how does that affect income? And that's a legitimate reaction. Okay. Yeah. And others might be, well, as I said before, hey, this is pretty inspiring. We have something to look forward to. Bruce is a role model. He's been a good father, a good husband. He's active in his church, very active in his church. He's very active in golf and the Virginia Golf Association. He writes books. Yeah. He does, he, and now he's going off on a trek and, is going to try to do it as a through trek, as if I understand correctly. He's going to start and make it through, and he's planned it out. And vintage Bruce, as he's going to go do it, he's going to do some good by raising money for the Appalachian Trail park.
Now, that's the kind of stuff I wanted to know. He's not only a lawyer, he's a top lawyer. Clearly given up a heck of a lot to not only go into the woods and suffer discomfort for about 6 months, but he's also going to be raising money, a lot of money, for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. Now that I found out a little bit more about Bruce's work life, I turned it on Gary and asked if he'd ever considered doing something like this. His answer was great. Yeah,
so I think Bruce is climbing a height that I don't know that I could do, walking the whole trek. My wife and I went to a speech that Bruce gave to a group of baby boomers in Richmond, about 150 of them, a speech and a slideshow about his walking the Camino de Santiago. And he also wrote a very inspirational book about it, which, by the way, has resulted in many people deciding to walk the Camino de Santiago. They never heard about it before, but they said, gee, he did it, and this looks really like something I could do. And as a result, people have done it. So my wife and I have been inspired by Bruce, and we are planning. It's on our bucket list. We're going to get it done to do the Camino.
Oh, awesome. That is fantastic. And have that impact is wonderful.
Yeah. Now, when you walk the Camino, you stop for lunch and you drink some good, Spanish wine, and you have some good food. Yeah. And that's a different trek than the Appalachian Trail.
It certainly
is. I think my wife and I can handle the Camino, but I don't know that we can handle.
Funny. And Gary's clearly worked out the differences between the Camino and the AT, even though the Camino is no stroll from all accounts. I think the red wine lunches were the temptation there, don't you think? Back to Bruce. I wanted now to know what Gary considered Bruce's best qualities to be, and he gave a considered answer, and one that I thought best summed up what Bruce will probably need the most when he's out there. Mind you, once we sorted out his best quality, I asked Gary the obvious follow-up, and his first answer was bloody priceless. I think the second answer was what he meant to say.
I would say that Bruce's mental, emotional, spiritual discipline. So he's not doing this on a whim.
No.
He's planned it out.
Yeah.
And Bruce tends to plan things and then finish them because he's prepared. So he's prepared his family, he's prepared his body, he's prepared what he's going to take with him. He's planned out his work environment. He's not going to be torn by guilt. He's given people notice and they understand what he's going to do. So Bruce isn't going to have any kind of baggage that would cause him to have doubts along the way. And so he's a guy who starts a marathon and finishes it, starts the Camino and finishes it, and so I think that's mental, emotional, spiritual discipline. Bruce has had to handle some tough situations that I've been involved in. And I got to tell you, when you give Bruce a tough situation, you can relax. He's going to get a good result. He's just a guy who kind of figure it out. And I think it's what's made him the multi-million-dollar lawyer, is that Bruce he's going to get in there and get it done. So,
but his mental strength and his discipline is definitely going to be called upon on the trail. It gives you bad days. There's no doubt about it. It gives you bad days, and it's how you cope with those bad days that really you work out, how you're going to go forward. And when you get 10 straight days of rain, that is wearing on the soul. And if he's got the discipline and he knows these things are going to happen, that's obviously going to hold him in good stead. But, no man is a Superman. So you also know some of his faults or flaws. What do you think about him that may possibly hold him back a little bit, or is there nothing?
Well, Bruce likes a good glass of wine, and I'm not so sure that's going to...
Drunk on the trail. Yeah, excellent idea.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to fit into his back. I think also he's very close to his wife and daughters. Okay, this is a close-knit family. And Bruce's daughters have been on mission trips to Latin America, and he takes them to New York. So he is a loving father. He's a loving son.
Right.
And I think the biggest challenge for Bruce is going to be is time away. Because this will be of a different quantity than, if I understand correctly, it's many months, or 4 or 5 months, or whatever the time is. That's different than...
It's going to be at least 5 months.
Yeah.
At least 5 months. It's 2,200 miles. It's a long way.
Yeah. And so I think that will be the hardest on Bruce. And quite frankly, probably very hard on his wife and 2 daughters who are, very close.
Yeah, I've actually asked some of my listeners on my other show to send in questions for Bruce. And the one that's coming up most of all is, what do your family think about this? And how do you feel about leaving your family for this period? So I'm looking forward to his answer on that. But I'm actually interviewing Cherry and also the 2 daughters as well. So that should be quite interesting. I must say, I wasn't expecting anything bad about Bruce. And it was really heartwarming to hear about this gentler side of him. So while I was on a roll, probably sure of what the answer would be, I asked Gary if he thought that Bruce would make it to the very end. So now, I think I know the answer here, but if you were a gambling man, what odds would you give on Bruce getting to the end?
I'm not a gambling man, but...
You're a lawyer, of course you're not a gambling man.
Yeah, but I have confidence that if Bruce's body holds up and a tree doesn't fall on him, or, we don't have an early freeze or some kind of thing outside of his control, that Bruce will finish it. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of guess you would. I kind of guess you'd be confident of that. Yes.
Yeah. So I believe Bruce will finish it and get it done and figure it out. If everything holds up. My suspicion is the only thing that will get in the way is something completely out of his control, that for whatever reason he can't figure his way around or above in some creative kind of way. He is a problem solver. He's good at getting things done. But so I expect him to finish, and We'll be surprised if he doesn't. I don't want to put any pressure on you, Bruce, if you're listening to this.
I think he'll be listening quite closely at some stage. I'll tell you, Gary. I think he will. Now, I wasn't really expecting him to say no, but that was really an endorsement and testimony to Gary's faith in his friend. And while he seemed to be in the mood, I asked Gary to share with us something about Bruce that we hadn't seen or, heard in our conversation so far. Here's what he had to say.
I would say that, deep down, Bruce is a bit of a softie. And so he's sort of this, he appears as gruff lawyer who handles the most stressful negotiations and bankruptcy, and he's in one of the most high stress practice areas. Okay. And if you're at Bruce's level, you get the big problems. You don't get the easy ones. You get the big problems. Okay. And so he has this sort of persona. He's kind of a big guy, but really, he's kind of an emotional softie. And I think, he's just a good person. And I won't say his daughters have him wrapped around their fingers. But,
but they have.
But I would say they certainly
that's the way it should be.
They certainly have his heart.
Oh, that's a wonderful thing. So Bruce is a softie. Who knew? Actually, I knew. I'd spoken to Bruce's wife and his daughters, and I could tell the strength of his family unit in those conversations. Now, I'd got all the good things about Bruce, and there appeared to be no dirt to dish at all. But I wasn't deterred, and I asked Gary for something that might be marginally embarrassing to Bruce. It was really funny. He couldn't think of anything for about a minute. Then, suddenly, something came to mind.
So, marginally embarrassing about Bruce. Yes, I do have one. Okay?
Okay.
So, Bruce can be very focused. Okay? And he's the kind of guy driving down the highway, he's thinking about problems. Okay. So there was a time when Bruce flew to Chicago, I believe it was, for a very important meeting. It had to be at the airport at 6:00. And it was one of those fly out to Chicago early in the morning and fly back to Richmond at the end of the day. So about 8:00 that evening, he lands back in Richmond, and he's walking through the airport, and he's fumbling for his keys, and he can't find his keys to his car. And then it occurs to him, I can't remember where I parked. This is really odd. So finally, he finds his way to the local or the police at the airport. And he says, my name is Bruce Mattson, and I can't find my keys, and I can't remember where I parked. And the officer said, "Oh, Mr. Mattson, we've been waiting for you. Not only did you leave your car right at the departure entrance, but you left it running with and locked with the keys in it." And so Bruce is obviously trying to work out some intricate, sort of a legal issue, and just pulled right
just
on, got on his plane, and and so I think that shows his level of concentration. So we're hoping he remembers his backpack, from campsite to campsite on the trail.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, dear me. I'm slightly worried about that now. If he's going to stop when he gets to Katahdin, or he might just keep carrying Morgan North.
That's right.
Dear, that's funny. Yeah. You've got to love that. The worst thing that came to mind, having known the man for 20 years, was that he once forgot to park his car at the airport. Let's face it, it's not exactly a felony, is it? Cracked me up, though. How funny. We finished up by chatting about his imminent departure, and this I thought was really, really nice. Gary and his colleagues are celebrating the hike and will be following along. Just listen to how cool this is. Now, have you noticed, has he started to wind down from work yet? I don't know what the arrangement is. I know he's going to start this hike in February. Do you notice that he started winding down?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's planned. That's agreed to by the firm.
Right.
Bruce did it the right way.
All right. Okay.
He developed clarity with the firm on what the arrangement would be, and secured, support and approval from the board of directors. So there should be no mysteries here whatsoever. And he started it, over a year ago. And so, being Bruce, he got it done right. And so absolutely. And as it should be, I don't know that it would be the right thing to do to be working 90 hours a week. and then stop on a Friday and start the hike on a Saturday?
I would agree with that. Yeah, certainly. So he's transitioning then, and do you notice a difference in him as he's getting ready for this hike? Is he now almost not moving? Is he kind of moving away from the firm and moving towards the hike? Does it look that way to you? I
think that he's definitely focusing on the hike, but it's apparent to me that he still cares deeply about his colleagues and cares about the firm and is there if you need him. But necessarily he has to get ready, and that's okay because of his arrangement right now. That it's expected that he will. He's doing a really good job of making sure the firm is thinking through, which we are. How we talk about this, internally and externally, in a way that is, again, beneficial for our colleagues and exciting for our colleagues. So we're planning, for example, to have a sort of an Appalachian Trail map in our lobby in Richmond. Where's Bruce? And kind of it's got to be able to follow and kind of.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, and kind of move it along.
That's interesting.
And we'll do a kickoff. So we want everybody to kind of celebrate this. It's our 30th anniversary as a firm, and there's things we want to do that are special or consistent with our culture. Bruce has been a cultural leader. He ran our self-improvement program for years. It was a program where we provided a pool of money to lawyers who would do something to improve themselves, whether it was buying a camera for photography or taking the family to Grand Canyon on a trip, something to, and you had to write a memo about it. People would submit pictures. Bruce ran that program for us and was really good at it. So this is sort of consistent with our culture that we would have somebody do this. And Bruce has been keen to make sure that we have an open line of communication with him, and his podcast, and what's happening, so that we can follow him. And I think it's going to be a real sort of emotional, cultural pickup for our colleagues to know that Bruce is out there. We'll be rooting for him, and
that's great,
and raising money for him along the way.
Well, I hope you are going to be listening to the podcast, because I'm literally going to be speaking to him at the top of mountains, and then within a day or so, you're going to hear that on the podcast. So it's going to be it's going to be an emotional thing for him. And when he gets to the top of that mountain at the end, it's going to be even more emotional. And I'm so looking forward to it, and I'm so glad you guys are following on. And he may have been leaving the company, but he's not leaving your hearts, which is a really nice thing as well.
Yeah, now we'll be following him.
So listen to that. I bet there are many of you out there who would wish that when you told your colleagues that you were leaving, they would have reacted the way in which Gary and his team are reacting. This almost feels like a team effort already. Imagine how great Bruce must be feeling, having all that love and support behind him. You haven't even heard about the reactions of his family yet. Oh my gosh. We've always highlighted on this show the value of support to enable the hiker to get there and to fulfill what they regard as their destiny. Having that support is really half the battle. You're a lucky man, Bruce, and to be fair, I know that you know that already. Now, just to finish up, I thought I'd let Gary have a chance to ask a question of Bruce, and it's one that reveals even more about our man. I want to ask you one last question, and that would be, if you were asking Bruce questions, what would you want to know?
I would say, Bruce, how are you going to keep your mind satisfied? You're so curious. You read. Bruce is the kind of guy who drives down the highway listening to lectures. He gave me one once. It was the history of the English language. It was like the most dense thing in the world. I'm thinking, this guy's you're driving to work listening to that. Some professor lecturing on it. So or he listens to great sermons, in his car. So this is a guy with a very active mind. So my question would be, how are you going to keep your mind engaged as you're walking, given how curious and inquisitive intellectually that you are? Okay, so that would be my question for Bruce, and I'm sure he's thought it through. And
I'm sure he has.
Yeah, and so just knowing Bruce, and again, I said he's a Renaissance man with incredible stamina and doing multiple things at one time. So,
well, I tell you what, Gary, tomorrow morning, no, not tomorrow morning, the week after this airs, my conversation with you, I'm going to ask Bruce that very question. So you're going to get the answer in the very next episode. So that should be quite good fun.
Fantastic.
I like that, and I'll be asking Bruce at the earliest opportunity. It was gratifying to listen to somebody else talk about a man who I've already been forming opinions about over the weeks. But really, you can only get to know somebody over a long period of time. I always intended to interview a colleague, if one would speak with me, because I wanted that different perspective, and I think that Gary shared that with us. There will be those of you out there who may be a little cynical about this. You know, it's a whitewash, life isn't like that. But that's the point. Life is like that in some places, and Bruce has had some great things happen to him in his life. The trail will examine him like he's never been examined before, but I think we're learning that this guy will have done everything he could do to make sure his hike is as good as it can possibly be. The fact that he has a terrific network of support will only strengthen his chances on the trail. Bruce is going to be back next week talking about one of his gear choices, his backpack. Don't forget to visit his Returning to Katahdin site as well as our sponsor site, Trailtopia. Also, in case you didn't know, I have another podcast, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, The Ultimate Midlife Crisis. You can find that on iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcasts, as well as on my site, mightyblueontheat.com. Bruce and I will see you next week.